Time is moving, and so are we. And in this lesson, we are starting with term 4 work on natural science grade 8. Term 4, natural science grade 8. And we are going to look at the earth and beyond. The earth and beyond. And we are only going to cover 3 units in this term. Okay, and that will be the end of the year. Actually, not the end of the term, but the end of the year. Okay, under the earth and beyond, we are going to look at the solar system, and we are going to look at beyond the solar system, and after that we are going to be exploring the space. Those are the only 3 units that we are going to cover for term 4. Okay, so let us start with the solar system. So the solar system is divided into 3 subunits, which is the sun, the objects around the sun, and the Earth's position in the universe. Okay, and the objects around the sun, they are divided into other 6 smaller units. Okay, so let's go for it with our introduction. That is on page, now we are on page 239 in your textbook. 239 in your textbook. Okay, hope you're following. So they say in the past it was believed that the earth is at the center of the universe. However, today we know that our earth is only a small part of one of the solar system. Our sun is the only one of billions of the other stars in our solar system. So now the Earth is not the center of the universe. It's just one of the a part of our solar systems. So let's start. We're going to start with the sun. The sun is the nearest star to the Earth. So the sun is a star. So they say it is the nearest star to the Earth. It is also the largest object in our solar system. Wow, okay. The mass of the sun is approximately 333,000 times the magnitude of the mass of the Earth. So the Earth is nothing compared to the sun, as they say that the sun is the biggest star. The sun consists of a ball of burning gases that give off light and heat. Okay, the light that we get from the sun and the heat that we get from the sun, it is because of these burning gases that are giving off this light and heat. Okay, it is the main source of energy. We know that by now. This energy comes from the powerful nuclear reaction called nuclear fusion. You remember nuclear fusion when we were looking at the nuclear power station? Okay, you remember that nuclear fusion of a uranium to give off the heat. That heat will heat up the water to steam to turn the turbine. I hope you recall that. That is actually on technology. This energy comes from powerful nuclear reaction called nuclear fusions. During these reactions, hydrogen gas is converted into helium gas. You have to know. During this nuclear fusion, what is happening? Hydrogen gas is converted into helium gas. Sunspots are large dark spots on the surface of the sun and are caused by a complicated interaction with the magnetic field of the sun. The sunspots are cool spots of the sun's surface. Okay, the temperature of a sunspot is about 3,800 Kelvin, and the surface temperature of the sun is about 5,800 Kelvin. So you can see that the sunspots are the cool spots because the temperature is lower on the sunspot. The temperature of the core is about 15.6 million Kelvin. Yeah. Okay. That's too much. That's too hot. Okay, let's learn about this Kelvin. They say that a scientist use Kelvin and not degrees Celsius to measure the temperature. We are used to temperature being measured using degrees Celsius, but for the solar system, the scientists, they've used the unit that is called Kelvin. Okay, now let's move to the next page, which is page 240. You can read the interesting facts on your own. And then here on the quick facts, they say hydrogen is the first element on the periodic table, and it is the lightest element. You remember they say during the nuclear fusion, hydrogen is converted into helium gas. Hydrogen gas is converted into helium gas. Don't forget that. So we know by now on the periodic table that hydrogen is the first element on the periodic table, and it is the lightest when it comes to weight. It is light. And then let's look at objects around the sun now. We've looked at the sun, and let's see what else is around the sun. So this is our sun. Okay, let's say the sun is here, and let's look at the objects that are revolving around the sun. We've got 8 planets. We'll learn about them. We've got dwarf planets. We will know what are dwarf planets. We have got moons, not just moon. We have moons, we have asteroids, we have meteorites, and we have comets. So we have 6 objects that are revolving around the sun. And all those objects, we might have different types. As we have 8 planets, we have different dwarf planets, we have moons, asteroids, comets, meteorites, you see. Okay, so let's look at these objects one by one. So we will start by the planets. They said we will study each type of these objects. So let's start with planets. Let me take this up a bit so that we can go further. We are starting with our planets. Planets do not give off light, okay? They reflect the light of stars. You remember when we were learning reflection and luminous objects. So the planets, they are non-luminous because they don't give off light. They just reflect the light of the stars. When is it a planet? To be classified as a planet, it must meet the following requirements. So an object to be classified as a planet, it must meet certain requirements, and those are these 3 requirements. It must revolve around the sun, number 1. It must possess enough mass so that gravity pulls it around into a round shape. And then it must be able to keep its orbit clear. That means that the planet must be able to attract other objects in its orbit to become part of it, or knock it out of its orbit. So these are the 3 requirements for any object to be classified as a planet. Number 1, it must revolve around the sun. Number 2, it must possess enough mass so that gravity pulls it into a round shape. Number 3 is that it must be able to attract other objects in its orbit to become part of it. Okay. And then they say the solar system looks like a flat disk. Okay. The sun rotates in the center, and all the planets revolve in the same direction as each other around the sun. Okay, we will see this now. They say it looks like a flat disk, and then the sun rotates in the center, and all the other planets revolve in the same direction around the sun. So we'll see this just now. On the quick facts, we've had something about the gravity. They say gravitational force keeps all these objects stable. As they are around the sun, they are kept by the gravitational force. So this gravitational force keeps these objects in stable, predictable orbits around the sun. So let's see this further so that we can understand. So now we have the planets. How many planets do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8. We have 8 planets. Yes. And that in the order of planets in our solar system is from the closest to the furthest from the sun. So the one that is number 1, it means it is closer to the sun. And number 8 will be far away from the sun. So the first one is Mercury, second Venus, then we have the Earth. The Earth is not the closest to the sun, otherwise we would die because it's so hot. So the Earth is number 3 in terms of it being close to the sun. We have the Mars, we have Jupiter, we have Saturn, we have Uranus, we have Neptune that is so far away from the sun. And then they tell us here, they say we have another planet that is called Pluto, but it is recognized as a dwarf planet. So we will go to dwarf planets, don't worry. So now we are looking at these 8 planets. Now let's look at the solar system. As they told us that the solar system look like a flat disk. So this is the sun in the center, and all these planets, they are just moving around the sun. And as you can see, Mercury is number 1, closer to the sun. Venus is number 2, closer to the sun. And the Earth, as we have said, it's number 3, right? You see that? And then we have the last one, which is Neptune, and it is the number 8. It's the one that is furthest from the sun. Now, we have learned a little bit about the Pluto, but we'll get there because they said it's classified as the dwarf planet. They say the 4 planets closest to the sun are rocky, and the 4 outermost ones are gaseous. So the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, these are rocky. Okay, rocky. And then the last 4, they are gaseous. Okay, so interesting facts that we are learning about the solar system. So we're going to look at each planet one by one, each planet one by one. Now we start with the Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It is a very heavy planet as it consists mainly of iron. After Earth, Mercury is the next densest planet. Okay, so they say it is the heaviest planet, but the Earth is the densest planet. So Mercury's surface is covered with large craters that have been caused by collisions with asteroids and comets. Don't worry, we'll learn about that when we get there. Mercury has a very thin atmosphere. Highest temperature is about 430 degrees Celsius, and lowest temperature is approximately 180. So it is super hot in the Mercury. Can we imagine, for us, if the temperature is 30 degrees, we cry, we say it's hot. So think about 430 degrees Celsius. But it also gets cold in the Mercury, because they can even go to about minus 160 degrees Celsius. It takes this planet 88 days to orbit around the sun and 59 days to rotate its own axis. Mercury, so it takes 88 days for this to make a full circle around the sun, 88 days. And to rotate on its own axis. So if it has got an axis here, for it just to rotate on its own axis, it takes 59 days. Mercury is about approximately 58 kilometers from the sun. It's not even close, it's still far from the sun. It does not have any moons, so Mercury does not have moons. Mercury is slightly larger than Earth. This is a quick fact. Is larger than the Earth's moon. Okay, and then the axis of rotation, the rotation of a celestial body around its own axis, and the orbit, it's the path on which a celestial body revolves around the sun. So you need to know these 2 definitions here as well. Axis of rotation, it is the rotation of celestial body around its own axis, and orbit, it's the path on which a celestial body revolves around the sun. Okay, so if this is the sun and Mercury is revolving here, that circle here where Mercury is moving, we call it the orbit. Okay, so it's the path on which a celestial body revolves around the sun. And axis of rotation, the rotation of a celestial body around its axis. So if this is here and this is turning around this point, then that is the axis of rotation. We go to page 200 and um, 242. We just started with the first planet, which is Mercury. We go to planet number 2, which is Venus. Venus is the second planet in our solar system. Similarities between Venus and Earth: they've got similar size, they consist of the same material, both have an atmosphere. Remember, Mercury has got little atmosphere. The atmosphere of Venus predominantly contains of carbon dioxide. Ve- Please know this: the atmosphere of Venus mostly consists of carbon dioxide. Venus also does not have an ozone layer. Okay, as a result, the UV rays of the sun decompose almost all the water. Okay, because there's nothing that is protecting the planet for us in the earth, which is the ozone layer. And remember, carbon dioxide destroys the ozone layer. So because Venus has got carbon dioxide, it doesn't have a ozone layer. This causes Venus to be a dry planet because water is burnt out. The average temperature, no, Venus has many volcanoes on its surface. It is the hottest planet in our solar system. So Venus is number one when it comes to hottest. The average temperature is 467 degrees Celsius. And then it is orbiting the sun. It takes 225. It takes longer than the Venus. And it takes 243 days to rotate around its own axis. Venus is approximately 108 million kilometers away from the sun, and it has no moon. So Mercury and Venus, they don't have moon. Quick fact: Venus is a bright object in our night sky. It is commonly known as the evening star or the morning star. Okay, so Venus is the star and it is the brightest. So we had done with planet number 2. We're going to planet number 3 now. And planet number 3 is where we belong, in the Earth. Very interesting. Earth will be discussed in greater detail later. Orbiting the sun takes 365,25 days. Okay, so which is what we call a year, but actually it's the number of days that the Earth takes to move around the sun. And the Earth takes 24 hours to rotate around its own axis. This is what we call a day. So rotation around the axis is a day, and rotating around the sun, it is a year for us. Very interesting. Earth has only one moon. At least we have a moon. And Earth, we are how many? 150 million kilometers away from the sun. And interesting facts you can read on your own, but they didn't give us much details on the Earth. They will say we will discuss it later. So at least we know the orbit and the rotation axis. Okay, now we go to planet number 4, which is the Mars. Mars is the planet with an ice cold desert. Okay, ice cold desert. They are dust storms which produce yellow dust clouds. And Mars is also known as the red planet, as its surface is red. Okay, and the temperature ranges from 17 degrees Celsius to minus 87. You see, yeah, it's a little bit cold. Orbiting the sun takes 687 days. Okay, they take longer. And the rotation around its own axis takes about a day as well. Almost a day like us, 24.6 hours. And Mars is approximately 228 million kilometers away from the sun. And Mars has 2 moons named Deimos and Phobos. Okay, so the first one that has got a moon is number 3, is the Earth, just one moon. Mars, number 4, has got 2 moons, which is the Deimos and the Phobos. interesting facts on the Mars you can learn. Let's go to planet number 5, Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. How is it? Jupiter is known as a gas giant as it does not have any solid surface. Remember we said number 1 to number 4, they are rocky. Number 5 to number 8, they are gases. Okay, so they say that Jupiter is known as a gas giant as it does not have any solid surfaces. Jupiter is a very stormy planet. The eye of a Jupiter is a huge red dot on the planet, which is actually a swirling storm. The temperature on the Jupiter ranges from minus 125 degrees Celsius to 17. It's not that hot as well. Orbiting the Sun takes 4,332 days, and Jupiter orbits on its own axis in every 9.8 hours. Wow, that's like 1/3 of our day. So Jupiter is approximately 778 million kilometers away from the Sun, and Jupiter has 63 moons. Wow. So we have number 4, which has got, number 3 has got 1 moon, is the Earth. Number 2, which is it Mars, has got 2 moons. Yes, and then the next one, which is Jupiter, it comes with 63 moons. Interesting. We move to planet number 6 now, Saturn. Saturn is planet number 6. Saturn is famous for the beautiful rings around it. So you see these rings. It is also a gas giant, and it is the second largest planet in our solar system. Now I don't know which one is the largest, because they said, yeah, Saturn is the largest and this one is the second largest. Jupiter. Saturn is mostly made up of hydrogen and helium, the 2 lightest elements in the universe. Okay, because hydrogen is number 1, helium is number 2. This makes Saturn the lightest planet in our solar system, and the average temperature is minus 185 degrees Celsius. Orbiting around the Sun takes 29.5 years. Wow, not even days, years. It rotates about its own axis every 10.5 hours. Okay, rotation about the axis is shorter, but for it to rotate the Sun, 29.5 years. Saturn is approximately 1,429 million kilometers away from the Sun, and it has 53 moons. So Jupiter still leads with 63 moons. Saturn has got 53 moons. And let's move to, what number are we now? Is it number 7? Yes, this is number 7. And the next planet is Uranus. Uranus is also a gas giant. Uranus does not rotate in the same manner as its fellow planets. It spins on its side. Okay, it spins on the side. And orbiting the Sun takes 84 years. Wow. And it takes 17 hours to rotate around its axis. Uranus is approximately 2,871 kilometers away from the Sun and 27 moons. That's number what in terms of the moons? 63, 53, 27, 2, and it's number 5 in terms of the moons. And Neptune, the last planet that we have. Neptune is the smallest of the 4 gas giants. Okay, Neptune has a large white cloud in the atmosphere that moves around at high speed. This causes the planet to be very windy. Average temperature is approximately minus 218 degrees Celsius. Orbiting the Sun takes 164 years, and rotation around its own axis takes 16 hours. There are 6 rings around the planet. Neptune is approximately 4,496 kilometers away from the Sun. Neptune has 13 moons. Okay, not bad in terms of the moons. Now we are done with the planets. Let's look at the dwarf planets. Okay, they say that Plato was first considered as the ninth planet before we knew that we had 9 planets, and Eris as the 10th planet, and then came Eris as the 10th planet. But Pluto, Eris, and Ceres were recently categorized as dwarf planets. So they removed these three, and they say they are dwarf planets. They are found in the Kuiper's belt. Plato is further from the sun than Neptune. Plato is 5,869 million kilometers away from the sun. Therefore, the temperature is extremely cold, approximately minus 230 degrees Celsius. It is known as a dwarf planet because, why do they call them dwarf planets? It is too small, it is so small, sorry, and it does not clear all the debris away from its orbit. Okay, so the reason this planet is called a dwarf planet, it is because it is so small and it does not clear all the debris away from its orbit. Okay, and then Plato and Eris are both smaller than our moon, so you have to know these two reasons. Okay, so we know why some planets are called dwarf planets now, and we've got 3 dwarf planets. It's Plato, it is a Ceres, and it is Eris. Okay, 3 dwarf planets: Plato, Eris, and Ceres. They are called dwarf planets because they are so small and they do not clear all the debris away from its orbit. So now let's go to the moons. Moons are naturally satellites that orbit around larger objects in space. They are moons with volcanoes, an atmosphere, and perhaps possible water oceans. Moons are not necessarily smaller than planets. There are several moons larger than Mercury, and the following planets are having orbiting moons. Okay, so we have already learned this when we were doing the planets. The Earth has got 1 moon, Mars has got 2 moons, Jupiter 63, Saturn 53, Uranus 27, and Neptune 13. Okay, I will read this interesting fact. In 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on the moon. 11 other people have now also walked the moon. Okay. So we have covered the moons and we go to the asteroids now. Asteroids are metal-like rock pieces with irregular shapes. Because it is small, it looks like needle joints of light in the sky. Many asteroids are found in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. There could be more than 300,000 asteroids. It has happened that asteroids collide with Earth and form large craters. Okay, and let's go to meteorites now. Meteorites and meteors and meteorites are small pieces of rock that orbit the sun. Some collide with the earth. When it enters the earth's atmosphere, it bends out and a bright streak of light is seen, and we call it our lucky star, Tina. These are commonly known as shooting stars. The largest part of the original meteor will burn out before it hits the surface of Earth. Any meteor that is large enough to enter the Earth's atmosphere and strike the surface before burning out is called the meteorite. So very important here. Any meteor that is large enough to enter the Earth's atmosphere and strike the surface before burning out is called a meteorite, because they say that normally the largest part of the meteor will burn out before it hits the surface of Earth. So if it does not burn out and it hits the surface of Earth, it's called a meteorite. Okay, So now you know when people they say, yeah, I saw a shooting star. It's not a shooting star, it's a meteor. Okay. So meteor is the one that bends before it touches the Earth's surface. And then meteorite is the one that it does not burn out and it hits the Earth's surface. Now we go to the last object around the planet. Is it the last one? I think so. Comets. Comets are masses of ice, rock, dust, and frozen gases. Okay, they consist of three parts. They've got a nucleus, they've got a coma, and they've got a tail. You see, they've got a tail, okay, and they have a nucleus and a coma. Comets are only visible when they approach the sun, where they melt and give off gas and dust clouds. We see it as a spectacular tail that shines. A comet's tail always points away from the sun. So you see this tail is away from the sun. Is it like that? Yeah. Some comets take thousands of years to move around the sun. Modern telescopes have made it possible to observe many icy objects outside the orbit of Neptune. It is an area called the Kuiper Belt. Kuiper's belt is beyond the planets, outside the orbit of the Neptune, and ends on the other side of Plato. This belt contains at least about 70,000 comets that are in elliptical orbit around the sun. The comets can be 100 kilometers and more in diameter. The Kuiper belt is 30 to 50 AU from the sun. Okay, very interesting. If you want to be a scientist, astronaut, or whatever, you can study these theories more, and you can be one of our scientists there. We continue then, page number 247. They say an AU, because we didn't know what is the AU, is an astronomic unit. A for astronomic, and U, it's unit. So an AU is an astronomic unit that is the same as the average distance between the Earth and the Sun. Okay, it is approximately 150 million kilometers. They say the Kuiper belt contains the following dwarf planets. Okay, so the dwarf planets are on the Kuiper belt, which is the Plato, Eris, Haumea, and Make. Wow. Okay, so we've got other planets, dwarf planets. So here there is Plato, Eris, Haumea, and Make. Remember, we also have another dwarf planet, Ceres. Inside the belt, the comets are close together. The outer edges are less dense. This belt is a source of short-term comets. Okay, so we continue with comets. In the odd cloud, there are a large number of long period comets. The odd clouds consist of two parts, which is the spherical outer odd cloud and the disc-shaped inner odd cloud. Some of the most famous comets of the odd cloud are Halley's Comet and Sedna. Halley's Comet takes 76 years to orbit around the sun. And then comets orbit in the spherical part around the sun, therefore from time to time close to the sun. Comets are divided into two groups on the basis of their length of time of an orbit. We have long period comets, which takes more than 200 years, and we have short period comet, which takes less than 200 years to orbit around the sun. Okay, so we have long period comets and short period comets. And let's move to our next page, which has got an exercise. I want to scroll down again. Don't worry about that exercise for now. Yes, now I want us to go to the Earth's position in the universe. Okay, this should be our last section, the Earth's position in the universe. The Earth is one of the 8 planets that orbit our sun. It is also the only planet we know where life is possible. There are approximately 7 billion people on Earth. The components that make life on Earth possible are temperature range. The distance between the Earth's suns allows it to have an ideal temperature range for life. The average temperature is approximately 14 degrees Celsius. I want us to learn this in points before we get details so we can get them. The components that make life possible on Earth is 1. Temperature range. Number 2, it's water. Number 3, it's sunlight. Number 4 is oxygen. Remember, we all need this for photosynthesis. Okay, so these are the elements that makes life possible on Earth: temperature, water, sunlight, and oxygen. Okay, so let's go through each one. The distance between the Earth and the Sun allows it to have an ideal temperature range for life. The average temperature is approximately 14 degrees Celsius. And then water is found in different states: solid, liquid, gas. And the surface of Earth consists of 30% land and 70% oceans. And then for the sunlight, green plants can photosynthesize in the presence of sunlight. The plants capture the energy of the sun, and this energy is passed along the food chain. We have already covered the food chain. Oxygen is necessary for development of more sophisticated forms of life. Green plants and algae produce oxygen. Okay, so these are the 4 components that makes life possible on Earth. Please know them: temperature range, water, sunlight, and oxygen. The last component that makes life possible in Earth or on the Earth is the atmosphere. So we have 5. The atmosphere, they say it maintains life on Earth by being the source of oxygen. Number 1, this is the gas required for respiration. Number 2, the atmosphere contains nitrogen, an unreactive gas that dilutes oxygen. Nitrogen is necessary for production of proteins and for plant growth. And nitrogen in the air is fixated in the soil by bacteria and absorbed by plant roots. And then atmosphere contain carbon dioxide that is required for photosynthesis. Atmosphere offer protection against the harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun. Okay, and the ozone layer in the upper atmosphere absorb these harmful rays. And then atmosphere has got lessening temperature changes between day and night. Without atmosphere, we would get sunburned during the day due to the intense heat of the sun. At night, we would freeze due to extreme low temperature. So they say from space, Earth is seen as a blue planet because it has got so much water. This brings us to the end of our solar system. Okay, and so please, this is very important. This is very important. After this, you can look at the summary and do the exercises that are concerned. Thank you for paying so much attention into this lesson. Okay, thank you.